Namaskar. Welcome to chapter 20 of Learning Stellar Astrology. Sorry for the delay, but I have been traveling and there were frankly very few interesting subjects that I could bring up at that time. But the recent elections in Delhi, which threw up again Shri Arvind Kejriwal as the Chief Minister of Delhi, did give an interesting topic, considering that not a lot of people were charitable about how he had run Delhi in the last 5 years. But it's interesting to study his chart and see how the victory came about and whether the BJP contributed to his victory inadvertently, or even Congress for that matter, by not actually having a candidate against him for the CM's position. But let's see how it worked out. So I got the details of this chart from another blog who claimed to have gotten the details from someone very close to Mr. Kejriwal. I have, of course, rectified the data a little bit using ruling planets when I studied the chart. And I have also written a detailed blog on this. I'll put the link to the blog on in the description of this video. This might be a slightly lengthy video, so please bear with me. If you recall, I had done similar videos regarding Shri Narendra Modi and Shri Devendra Fadnavis as well. So let's get down to it. As you can see, the chart of Arvind Kejriwal ji over here, I always like to have a look at the chart just on the face of it, see what planet is sitting where and doing what, to get an idea of the person. Now, the first thing that stands out over here is I always look at the ascendant. I can see the ascendant is sitting in the sign of Leo. Leo basically is, the lion, the king of the forest. So these people generally have a bit of an authoritarian streak in them. And this is a lesson, people who have this streak may need to moderate it a little bit in dealing with the public. But like I always say, I mean, there is I'd like to take this opportunity to answer this question as well. A lot of people ask, when do I look at ascendant and when do I look at moon? So it's my personal interpretation, and I may be wrong, that ascendant is basically the instinct of a person. It's the first thought that comes in your mind, your basic nature, while moon is your mind. So many a times what happens is a situation happens in your life and you tend to have a certain reaction to it. The reaction could be of anger, of joy, of love, or whatever, of confusion for that matter. So that reaction, the quality of that reaction is determined by your ascendant. So for example, let's say your car gets nicked by some other car, and what's the first reaction that you will have? If your ascendant is in a fiery kind of a sign, like let's say Aries or Leo, you might jump to anger first, but then the moon will come in, which is your considered thought, and where the moon is placed will determine how you actually react outwardly. So that's the difference. So when we say ascendant is in Leo, the instinct is that of being an authoritarian, a little bit like a king. My way of, I'm not going to explain myself to you, that kind of a attitude. You can also see that three planets, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter, are falling in Leo, which kind of makes this sign a little bit more dominant as well in this gentleman's personality. Now, look at what is contained within the ascendant, Pluto, excuse me, Pluto and Uranus. Now, the interesting thing about Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune is that these three planets have not been completely studied, because I understand that since the time they have even been discovered, these grahas have not even completed one entire circumambulation around the sun. They haven't completed one entire 360-degree circle around the sun. So we don't know what kind of an impact they have in terms of being placed in various signs. But we are not talking about signs here. We are talking about the houses, and houses keep moving. So in this case, Pluto and Uranus both fall in the sign of the first house, the ascendant. And what does Pluto say? So one thing that I've noticed with a few Pluto people whose charts I've seen, Pluto and ascendant people, is that they tend to have a very global view of things. Like if they have an idea, the first thing that they jump to is, oh, can I use this? Can I apply this to the world, or how can I make a public utility of this, or some way to have some influence over masses? And Western astrologers do actually consider Pluto as the karaka for mass events like revolutions or something which takes a whole bunch of people together. So, since ascendant determines the self, these people, the people who have ascendant and who have Pluto in the ascendant, tend to have this mass outlook. Like they'll want to do mass artis, for example, something like that. Uranus is the second planet which is in the ascendant, and Uranus is an explosive planet. It's like if Mars is dynamite, then Uranus is a hydrogen bomb. So basically, in the same line, but like just scaled parabolically. Now, Uranus gives people explosive intelligence, explosive temperament, depending on what aspects of your personality it is controlling. I know someone whose Uranus is conjunct with her ascendant, and this person has either extreme love or sudden anger, and almost like bipolar. Luckily, the chart of her chart is not bipolar, so she's all right. But it exacerbates these extreme mood swings and extreme behavior at times. So, but this is just an overall look at the chart. The other thing I notice is that Ketu is in the second house, and we'll come to see the house significations of Ketu later. But I can tell you that it does signify the 8th and 12th house, which, as per my system, the system that I follow, means that Ketu is afflicted to an extent. And generally, people with an afflicted Rahu or Ketu in the second house tend to have an addictive kind of a nature. Like these people can get addicted to something. Now, why addictive? Because second house controls the mouth, the taste of a person. And if Rahu or Ketu, which are natural malefic grahas, are there, and they are also afflicted because of presence of 8th and 12th house, they tend to have an addictive kind of a nature, that they'll get addicted to sweets, for example, or even to alcohol or smoking or something like that. Now, I don't know whether Mr. Kejriwal was ever addicted to something like this, or maybe just to like sweets, for example, which is not good for health. But this is a pattern that I've noticed generally. I'm not saying that Mr. Kejriwal has this. I'm just saying that this is a pattern that I've noticed generally in people. Now, the next table here is basically the cuspal sublords. This is just for our information. We'll come to it later. Final is the dasha. We know that Mr. Kejriwal was in the Rahu dasha from 1990 to March 2008, and he's currently in Jupiter dasha, which will go on till March 2024, which is around the time of the next general election. And then you have got Saturn Mahadasha, which is going to go on from March 2024 to March 2043, around 19 years. Now, let's talk a little bit about Mr. Kejriwal's personality. I find that the Moon Nakshatra, it means the nakshatra that the moon was sitting in at the time of your birth, it determines a lot of your personality. Now, in the case of Mr. Kejriwal, the nakshatra is Kritika, and its alternative name is Dhanarksha. Its planetary lord is the sun. You can see that his moon is at 29 degrees 47 minutes 44 seconds in Aries. Now, the interesting thing about Kritika is that only about 25% of Kritika falls in Aries. The balance 3/4 falls in Venus. So Kritika itself has a kind of a combination of Mars and Venus combined with Sun, because Kritika itself is ruled by Sun, but 3/4 of it falls in a Venus ruled Taurus, and 1/4 falls in a Mars ruled Aries. But this is the area that we are interested in, the Mars ruled Aries area, because that's where Mr. Kejriwal's moon falls. Now, the Yeah, ancients of India, they spoke a lot in parables, and they spoke a lot in terms of stories and symbolisms, because that was the best way to convey abstract concepts to the next generation. So the way I generally understand nakshatras, and let me tell you, I am not an expert on nakshatras, but it's an area that I am actually trying to pick more on, learn more on. The way I understand nakshatras, and the way I recommend people to understand nakshatras instead of just reading something online, is just look at three things. Look at the names of the nakshatra, look at the symbols of the nakshatra, and look at the deity of the nakshatra. And then look up the stories around the deity, or look up the implications of the symbol. Now let's take Mr. Kejriwal's nakshatra Kritika for example. I also, honestly, I've made a table of all the charts I've seen, and I have kind of shortlisted a bunch of people whose moon is in Kritika, and I try to think of what is the common, behavioral trait amongst all of them, actually, because that will give me some kind of an idea of what Kritika does to a person. Now, we can see that the symbol is a knife, a blade, razor's edge, sharp instrument, or a spear, or even a flame. Flame because the deity is Agni, the alternative deity is Kartikeya. Now, what does a knife or a razor or a sharp instrument tell you? It will evoke a feeling of piercing, penetrating, cutting, opening, destroying. These kind of things come out when you look at the symbolism. And it's true to a large extent, because Kritika natives actually make great critics. They absolutely love criticizing, and they sometimes maybe doing it uh, because they feel it's for the good of the other person. At least this is the common theme that I've seen in the five or six Kritika charts that I've seen. And maybe Mr. Kejriwal is like this, I don't know. But they have a very sharp tongue. They are able to hurt people a lot with the way they speak in terms of sarcasm, or even just, talking down to people, or a holier than thou kind of an attitude, or I know better kind of an attitude, and this is something that's there, and it's good in the sense because it also calls for a penetrating personality. So these guys, or these people in Kritika, are able to really penetrate into the matter, go into depth, divide and study things. So for them, a lot of the world is actually a laboratory which can be, separated, and its parts can be examined. Now, the story of the deity, which is Kartikeya, is that he was born of Shiva, Lord Shiva, but he was taken care of by the wives of the seven rishis, which is the Kritika Nakshatra, the seven stars. They took care of him. And Kartikeya was born with the specific purpose of killing a particular asura, and a particular demon, for lack of a better word. And these are the themes that you generally see. Now, what is Kart? He's the general of the divine army, right? And a general is always going to fight. See, what's the difference between the anger of a king and the anger of a soldier or a general? A king needs to be angry only for a small period of time, to make, if he at all he needs to be angry. Ideally, he shouldn't get angry, but if at all. But a general or a soldier needs to carry that fire for much longer, because he or she is going to be in the thick of the battle for much longer. And therefore, they need to carry that fire of anger, or righteous retribution for a longer time than even the person who's ordered them to go into battle. Now, this is the kind of a defining feature of some of the Kritika personalities. Obviously, the entire chart has to be seen. You can't make a judgment about a person based on just the nakshatra, which is why I'm saying that I am analyzing the nakshatra here and not the person. And you can kind of correlate what fits and what doesn't. So these natives will have a very purpose focused kind of a life, that they, once they decide to achieve something, they really do risk it all, because the general knows no other way, right? He has to do or die basically. And they manage to hold on to their angers and grudges for a little bit longer. This is a characteristic I've seen more actually in the other Rashi ruled by Mars, which is Scorpio. I mean, those guys will never forgive ever, right? But a little bit of that you can see even in this nakshatra, a little bit in Aries, only because of the way it is this thing. The other thing is that Kartikeya, since he was not taken care of his parents, he was taken care of by someone else. Now, this is another theme that I have noticed in the other charts of Kritika Nakshatra that I have seen, where either due to ill health or due to some other reasons, or like travel or work or whatever, the Kritika natives, the child who was had a Kritika Nakshatra, and I know a few of them, were taken care of more by people other than their parents. It could be like an aunt or a grandparent, or something like that. Or one of the parents wasn't there. So either the father was missing or the mother was missing. And this is, I don't know if this is again the case with Shri Kejriwal, but this is what I've seen in general, those 6, 7 charts of Kritika that I have seen, that this was the common theme. And they also tend to look for father or mother figures outside of their family. Like, I don't know again whether this is applicable to the person in question, but this is just a general thing that I have seen. So the other name of Kritika is obviously Dahanaksha. Dahan, as you know, means burning, and it again kind of feeds into the same story of having a very scorching kind of a personality. I wouldn't say unpleasant, but it's difficult to be on the wrong side, actually. Let me just put it that way. The other thing, just generally, I'd like to point out with respect to nakshatras is that the way you look at nakshatras is you look at the nakshatra lord, in which in this case is the sun, and you look at the sign lord in which the nakshatra is, which in this case is Mars, because it is in Aries. Okay, and you look at Mars energy being transmitted, the Mars energy, because he is the Rashi Lord in which the nakshatra falls, being transmitted through Sun. So I'll give you an example. The first nakshatra in Aries is Ashwini. Ashwini is ruled by Ketu. Ketu is headless, right? It has no mind of its own. And Mars. So Mars energy is going almost mindlessly through that aspect of Ashwini. And that's what gives it, like a horse. That's the symbolism of Ashwini. That it's a horse's head. You put a horse and you put their eye blinders on, and then they will just keep going straight. It's almost like they will not look here and there. They'll just keep going, and that symbology does fit in with this general pattern of reading charts. In fact, I had seen another video. If I find it, I'll link it here. It's by some other astrologer. I don't remember who, where they had done an analysis of mass data analysis of serial killers, and a lot of them had an Ashwini dominant kind of a chart, which is Mars, which is burning, fire, general, martial, sexual kind of an energy, and it's going through Ketu, which is headless. So there is no filtering. It's almost like kind of magnifying it. In the case of Kritika, however, Mars is going through Sun, and so the Sun kind of, because Mars is the general and the Sun is the king, so the king needs to kind of, like I said, doesn't need to retain his anger. He can pacify people afterwards. Mars energy is little bit tempered by the sun, so perhaps, which is why it doesn't come out in form of anger, but it comes out in the form of criticism. You see, there's a slight twist which happens over here, but this is just to speak about personality. I am not going to go into personal life, because honestly that does not concern us in any way. And now let's come to the his chart and significators, and how he managed to pull off such a spectacular victory. And I'd like to begin here by first congratulating him. Congratulations on an amazing victory. You've managed to retain almost all of your gains. The average margin of victory, I think, was over 20,000 votes in each seat. That is stupendous. And it really is a victory that the other parties, especially BJP, should learn something from in terms of how they want to strategize going forward. Now, let's look at the dashas basically one by one. So, in 1990 to 2008, as we've seen earlier, Shri Arvind Kejriwal was in the dasha of Rahu. Now, Rahu, as you know, is a natural malefic, and one thing that I have noticed with Rahu is that whenever Rahu or Ketu, or even Saturn to an extent, but more so Rahu and Ketu, I felt, give something, they keep hold something back. It doesn't give you a full satisfaction. And in the case of Rahu, it kind of, the symbolism is already there, right? It's a head without a stomach. So whatever it eats, there is no satisfaction about, because there's no stomach to fill. So this kind of symbolism is already there. So Rahu will always kind of hold something back and not give you everything in return. Now, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal has been busy with social work. I mean, he hardly attended office, I believe. I mean, you can Google this up. He was largely on leave to do his personal pursuits in public domain. And it was largely during this period, 2008 to from 1990 to 2008. This was the period that he was doing this. Now, let's look at what houses Rahu looks at. Now, the first thing I look at is I look at these three lines, which is just like a general understanding of how this period is going to be. Now I know that there is 5812. Now 5812 generally gives some sort of a scandal, a financial scandal or a sexual scandal or something like that. 35812 generally gives, you get fooled by people. But in this case, this may not have been the case because there is 1011. So 1011 is 10th house, as you know, is reputation, and 11th house is, as you know, gain. This kind of is like a protection against the worst houses even. So the worst houses will give you a lot of struggle, but if you have got 10 and 11 in your chart along with that, they will be able to extricate you out of it also. And that's how stories are made of, right? I mean, when you have a poor child born in a small household, he's a chai wala and he becomes the PM. That's the story we want to hear. Not like born with a silver spoon and then goes on to run the family business. That's not what we want to hear. So these are the kind of stories that are here. A lot of struggle. And look, I am no. I do not subscribe to Mr. Kejriwal's politics at all. But no one can deny that he has worked hard and he has taken efforts to get where he wants to be. Who helped him internally or behind, that's a different story. But he had to take efforts. No one can deny that. So this is the general. So I know that Rahu is going to be decent for him. But you notice that he had some failed ventures that time. He did not really come into the public knowledge at that time. And for that, we need to look at the strong significators. For those who've seen the early videos, the first two lines of all these planets will tell you what houses will be activated, and the last two lines will tell you, these two lines, that how they will be activated. Now look at the first two lines. We know that the star lord is stronger than the planet, right? You have a 10th house here, you have 8 and 12, and you have 12th house, which is stronger, and a singular 12, right? There's no other house along with it. So the primary house activated is a 12th house. Okay, so what it really meant is that, what is 12th? 12th is staying away from home, traveling, it is loss, it is not having a specific aim. 12th house is also the house of sleep, so some sort of lethargy, stuff like that. 5, 8 and 12 would never let him keep that job, because 5th house is directly opposing the 6th house, because it's 12th from the 6th house, or one before the 6th house, however you want to see it. But he had the 10th house, which is why he did not lose his job. From that, he had gains. But along with gains, again, you see he has 8, 12. Now 8 and 12, whenever they come together, either 8 or 12 or 6, 8, 12, or to a lesser extent even 6, 8 or 6, 12, these houses create problems, and the only two houses who can counter these issues is house number 10 and house number 11 if they come together. Alone 10 cannot counter, it can reduce your troubles a little bit. Alone 11 again cannot counter, it can reduce your troubles a little bit more. But only 10 and 11, if they are together, they can counter and ensure you come out of that situation. So you can see, because of this largely 12th house, which is the Vyayasthan, he did not come into public eye at that time. But he did have his little bit of reputation, he did gain from it, but through a lot of troubles. Now, in 2008, he came into the Dasha of Jupiter. Remember, Dasha determines status, and he's still in the Dasha of Jupiter. Now, you notice what has changed. Yes, it has the fifth house, it has the 12th house, but it also has the 10th house, and this time the 10th house, 110, which is self efforts, and 10th is reputation, comes at this level, which is stronger than this level. So now this 12, which was alone operating over here in Rahu, in Jupiter Dasha, it now is countered by a 10, and it is countered by a 3, which is communications, and is countered by 1, which is self effort. So 12 does not have the support of a 6 or an 8 to do a lot of trouble for this person. And how is the result coming? He is getting gain of reputation. Okay, 411 generally means popularity. So even I have seen charts of some celebrity right wing people. They have asked me their chart from time to time, and one thing that I've noticed is that they have a lot of 411, and when they have a lot of 411s in their chart, they'll suddenly see their followers go up massively, and so on and so forth, and that easy popularity, that easy popularity comes to them. Shri Narendra Modi has a lot of 411 in his charts as well. That's why he's able to take difficult decisions and still not lose popularity. Now, you can also see there is 6 8 over here, and it's at a strong level. So that is also going to harm him a little bit, because it is combining with Jupiter. But having 10 11 is kind of protecting Mr. Kejriwal. Seventh house is here. He's getting help from some partner, whether it is opposition or some other partner. We don't know, but he is able to make some team around him, which is able to help him. Now, when Kejriwal ji won, we can see he is basically currently in the Moon Antardasha, Moon Bhukti, the way I like to call it. Moon Bhukti is actually quite very ordinary for him. If you look at the moon, he has results of 12, which is loss, and 1 is self effort, and he has got 5 8 12 and 10. So fine, he's getting some reputation through self effort as well, but this is not such a strong combination at all. And this is why I feel there were a few astrologers who got this completely wrong, who said that he will not become the CM again, he will not become the CM again. And honestly, I found this chart after the election results came out, and if I had seen this chart before the results, I don't mind saying I too would have been confused by this particular this thing, and I may have concluded that he might not get elected, or at least he might lose his seat, something like that. But thankfully, I did not see this chart then. I did not have this chart then, and I actually solved a Prashna Kundali for someone who had asked me, and I had concluded that BJP would be losing quite badly in the elections, but because Prashna was very specific. But this chart would have only confused me. So I started to ask myself that why would he win this election despite having a bad bhukti? I mean, there's no positive, there's no 11 here. In fact, the which houses are being activated? House 1 and house of loss. So self and loss. Still, he managed to hold on. And this is where I said that BJP may have, and Congress for that matter, may have contributed to his victory a little bit for two reasons. One is his Dasha Lord, the Lord which made him the CM of Delhi, was still operating. And remember, Dasha protects the status. So, a person who moves from a cycle to a Mercedes because his Dasha changes from a bad Dasha to a good Dasha, in a bad bhukti, he might not have money to put petrol in that Mercedes, but he will still own that Mercedes, and he will not. He will still be known as a Mercedes owner. So his status will be protected, even though he might face a big loss. So they BJP and Congress never put up a strong candidate, and when I say strong, I'm only meaning from point of view of Kundali. In fact, they put up no candidate for that matter against Mr. Kejriwal for CM ship, and thus there was a bit of inertia coming in from this dasha, which protected his status and allowed him to continue his CM. Now he actually his vote share actually reduced a little bit. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I do think his vote share reduced a little bit in his seat. But he managed to get through for this simple reason that he already was the CM, and Dasha protects the status. I honestly don't know of any other reason why this would have happened, but c'est la vie, such is life, and this was the case finally. Now, what we need to look at actually is the next dasha to see what is going to happen in the future. Now, Jupiter will end in March 2024, and then you've got Saturn. Now, if you look at Saturn for that matter, here you go. This is Saturn. This is actually more positive than Jupiter. Why? Because in the strong, well, one you can obviously clearly see it's got 10, 11. And in the positive, the 6 there's no 6, 8, it's 8, 12. So there is going to be problems for him, obviously, because 8 and 12 will be there. But because of 10 and 11, he will be able to counter them very effectively. And if you notice in Jupiter, he had 6, 8 at even the sublord's star lord level, which is not a good position for such negative combinations to remain. In this case, he has just 12, and okay, fine, 12 is giving some support to the negatives of 8 and 12 above, but he also has 1, 3, 10, and 11. And this actually puts him in a very good position. And as you know, Saturn is a graha that can actually make a pauper a king and a king a pauper. Now, two questions arise, or actually one question arises primarily, is that if Jupiter is so good that he was destined to win, right? Why did he lose against Sri Narendra Modi in Varanasi, for that matter? And why was he also not able to? This is the second question, but it stems from the first. And why was he also not able to become the CM of a full state like Punjab? Now, as regular watchers and people who read my blog may remember, I always stress on the concept of sthala, kala, and patra. All of astrology is contained by these three things. It should be read. A chart should be read in the context of sthala, what place it is, kala, what time it is, and patra, what character it is. So, for example, let's say a beggar has 10, 11 in his chart, and the richest businessman in India has 10, 11 in his chart. Does not mean that the beggar will get the same kind of gains that the rich businessman might get. The rich businessman might get a contract of some $5 billion, and he might get in his car, be on his way home, and he'll see this beggar at the signal, and he'll give this beggar 1,000 or 2,000 rupee note, and that would be beggar's 10, 11. So you cannot compare one person's 10, 11 with another person's 10, 11. So while 10, 11 will give gain and reputation, the extent of the gain or the extent of the reputation should be seen from the sublord of the 10th house. So 10th house is the envelope. How filled that envelope is, you will have to go and see in the cuspal sublord of the 10th house. So what is the cuspal sublord of the 10th house? Look over here. It is Saturn. Okay. Excuse me. Now Saturn is signifying these two things. Okay, always remember when you look at cuspal sublord, you just look at these two lines, not this, because these are not houses which are being activated. The last two lines are houses which are saying how the houses will be activated. Which houses? These first two lines. So look at the cuspal sublord of the 10th house, which is Saturn. Saturn has got 6, 8, 12 and 11. Even if you look at just the strong houses, it is 8, 10 and 2, 11. Now 2 is Dhanasthan, which is a positive house. 11 is the house of gain. We all know that. 8th house and 12th house, you know, are both 8th house is known as Mrityusthan, I believe, and 12th house is Vyasthan. So on the whole, it's mixed tending to the negative. You can even say it's mixed tending to the negative, which is why he is not able to rise above a certain level. In the same, almost in the same time frame, when he became Delhi's CM, and twice, remember, first time he was for some 15-20 days, he resigned and he came back, and he came back with a huge majority, but he still could not go to Varanasi and defeat Narendra Modi. Why? Because he was against Narendra Modi's chart at that time, which is an exceptionally powerful chart up to a certain date. Now, I have actually, just for as an intellectual exercise, I did a comparison, okay, of four charts that I have of national level or decently well-known leaders that we have. So this is Kejriwal ji, Fadnavis ji, Modi ji, and Rahul ji. The current dasha for all of them is this: when it started, when it will end, and what is the 10th cuspal sublord. This will tell you how much gain will be there. Now let's look at the dasha for Arvind Kejriwal, and we'll look for Narendra Modi. Okay, this is AK, which is Arvind Kejriwal. This is NM, which is Narendra Modi. You know this is strong. This is all. This is strong. This is all. This is strong. The other significators. Now, at the first go, you see that we've already examined his Jupiter dasha. He's got 10 and 11, but he also got 6, 8, and 12. Right? So it's mixed but positive. Look at Narendra Modi's dasha. Nothing, just 11, 10, that's it. And 8 on its own actually will not do anything bad. 8 can give you results like lottery gains or gains through means that other people cannot understand, or gains through occult and things like that. So self-effort gains of what? Of reputation. This is it. It's not cluttered. There is no 6, 8, 12, nothing. It is just simple 1, 10, 11. This is an ideal chart for victory. No way that this chart can beat this chart. No way this dasha can beat a person in this dasha can beat a person in this dasha. It cannot happen. And that did not happen. Now look at the 10th cuspal sublord of AK and also of NM, which is Narendra Modi. We've again seen the 10th cuspal sublord of AK. It has got 8 and 12, and it has got 10, 11. But it is not. It's not. It's like I said. It's mixed, tending slightly to the negative. Look at Narendra Modi's 10th cuspal sublord. Again, it is Moon itself, and it's just 111. Self-effort gain. That's it. Absolutely, absolutely no affliction of any kind. Not even a single 8 or a single 12. Not that a single 8 or 12 or 6 could have harmed him, but even that is not there. So this is like a blue sky kind of a chart for gains. Like when he gains, he will gain a lot. When this person gains, his gains will be limited. So I am not saying that AK will not progress. In fact, he might do really well in the opposition camp. For all you know, he might be made like he might be a contender for prime ministership from the opposition camp. I don't know. I am just theorizing or speculating here, but the point is he does not have a chart that can cause him to win beyond a certain level. See, there are many businessmen and many successful businessmen, but not everyone becomes a Bill Gates or not everyone becomes an Ambani. They may have very comfortable lives. They may have a lot of power, a lot of money, a lot of comforts, but they get caught at a certain level, right? And that is where the cuspal sublord makes a difference. Now, just for our understanding, I want to also put Shri Devendra Fadnavis' chart here so that you can understand how dasha plays a role. If you remember, I had done a video on Devendra Fadnavis specifically, and wherein I had predicted that he would not become the CM again. And the reason is this: in July 2017, his Ketu Dasha started. I think the Dasha before Ketu's Venus, which was a very good Dasha for him, actually. You can see that video, and it's a fairly detailed video. Now, if you look at this particular Dasha, Ketu of Devendra Fadnavis, which will go on till July 2024, again around that same time frame as Kejriwal, um, he has a direct 6, 8, 12. He does not have the 10th house. He has 11th house. In fact, the type of result is 9. 9 is Maraka for 10th house. So change in reputation. In fact, that's what I predicted. There will be a change in reputation and it will be a downgrade to an extent. I personally was hoping that he might be picked up in the Delhi for some important ministry or something like that. But he has now become the leader of opposition in Maharashtra, which is a change of reputation, and it is a downgrade from being the CM of the richest state. And despite him doing such great work, yes, there are points on which you can criticize him. I criticize him. But if you look at the earlier few CMs of Maharashtra, I mean, Devendra Fadnavis was head and shoulders above them in terms of the kind of work he did. But still, the chart ruled supreme, and he was not able to get elected. And this is a prediction that I had made few years ago, that he would not be continuing as the CM, because the chart doesn't change, right? The dasha is what the dasha is, and you know what the dashas are at the time the child is born. So it doesn't matter, what the transits or movements or whatever happens closer to each date. The prediction should not change. It can be wrong, but it should not keep changing, right? Now, if you look at the Devendra Fadnavis's 10th house, 10th cuspal sublord, you can see that he almost has a 10th cuspal sublord like Narendra Modi. You see, 1, 10, 1, 8, 10, 11, 1, 8, 10, 11, and he has a 7, because 7 means some kind of a partnership, someone helping him, right? Some, kind of a coterie that's helping him, or, someone even from the opposition might be helping him. I don't know. But which is why when he gained a lot. So when the postman called Dasha delivers him the letter of the 10th house or 11th house or 10th and 11th house, he will gain a lot because the letter contains a lot of good stuff. Right now, the postman didn't come to give the 10th house letter, but if he comes, he will get a lot of things. So, Devendra Fadnavis should actually look forward to his period after 2024. In the meanwhile, he should work hard, he should accumulate some punya. His good chart means what? You're withdrawing from your punya bank, which you accumulated in past lives. So, you have to deposit. You have to deposit, good things that you do for dharma, good things you do for temples, etc. And you have to create punya for your next life. But this is why I had predicted he would not become. So I want to give a kind of a comparison between AK's 10th CSL, because AK became a CM of like almost a city state. It's not a full state, right? It's a union territory. And he doesn't have the police under his controls, and he has limited powers in a way. And with DF, who also, young guy, young dynamic guy, and he became a CM, and he became a very good CM, and he ran a full state and the richest state. This is the difference between the 10th CSL, 10th Cuspal Sublord, of a person who runs the richest state of a country versus the person who runs a city state or a union territory. And you can clearly see the difference between the houses being signified. Now, the last chart, I'd like to specify is Shri Rahul Gandhi. Now, I haven't done the all for him. This is an old this thing, and I just kind of quickly put this together. You can see that this is not a bad chart actually, because he has the 10th house, and in both the planet and stellar significations and the sublord significations. And his 10th Cuspal CSL is also Rahu, his Dasha is also Rahu, this is going to go until 2035. So his reputation is there, but he does not have the 11th house. And to become the chief minister, prime minister, president, etc., it is, you cannot do it without 11th house, because 11th house is the house of gain. It is the catalyst, that next level, that X factor that the chart should have. He does not have that, at least till 2035. So unless his opposition is someone with a chart like this, for example, absolutely no chance of no reputation at all, just 6 8 12 this person cannot win. He can retain his existing fiefdom, because it's like a sole proprietorship, right? I mean, the father gives it to the mother gives it to the son. That may continue, but I don't see it actually, like this chart becoming this the PM of the country, unless honestly it is faced by a really atrocious chart. I mean, you'll have to put up a really bad chart person in front of this kind of signification for this signification to become the prime minister of this country. And this would not be good, because unless the prime minister has winning combinations, then the prime minister cannot even win against external aggressors. Modi can win against China, he can win a lot of things because he's got 10-11 and such an unafflicted 10-11, right? If you cannot deal with your internal enemies, you cannot deal with your external enemies. So, which is why it's very important, and which is why having a democratic setup in a party is very important, because there is no IIT, JEE, or like a CAT exam for politics, right? uh, you have to test fitness in some way, and the internal politics of an organization is the mechanism, however ugly it may be, but that is the mechanism through which charts are tested indirectly. They don't know they're testing charts, they think they're doing politics, but charts are tested through this party politicking mechanism, and which is why only the best rise. And we want only the best to rise, because if this person cannot win against internal people, no way this person is winning against external aggressors. So, which is why it's important for people to rise in the right way with struggles, because then only the best chart will win. So anyway, so this is quite interesting. You can pause the video and you can actually compare these three charts and their significations, and you can come up with nuances between in all these charts on why someone did slightly better, why someone did slightly worse. So this was my exposition of Shri Arvind Kejriwal's chart. I think it's an above average chart. I The only piece of advice that I can give to him is, I'm worried, like, generally when I see the fifth house is house of health, right? Because fifth house signifies stomach. And there's a saying in Sanskrit which is roughly translates as, a person whose stomach is fine, his health is fine. But you can see that this fifth house is regularly connected with 812, and 812 is causing interruptions, disruptions. This is the kind of, because eighth is house of insults, delays, disappointments, obstacles. 12th is house of loss, and also the first house, because it deals with self. So 1 5 8 12 suggests that there will be a lot of health issues, and primarily connected with either head, because first house is head, or fifth house, which is stomach, which could be like maybe diabetes, some liver issue, whatever. I'm not very good at health, medical astrology, so I don't generally advise people, but this is just the broad chart that I'm saying. Or it could be third house, which would be like hands. It could be maybe your skin or something like that. But broadly, I think he should take care of his stomach, take care of his health, and I understand he's recently become a Hanuman Bhakta as well, and Hanuman is the gateway to God, and he should be genuine in his bhakti, and may Hanuman ji bless him with good sense and good life and good health. And yeah, so this is the chart exposition of Sri Arvind Kejriwal. Best wishes to him for this term. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much.